They join late. So without further ado, today's talk is about Zanubrutinib, and our CEO, Jane Nicholson, is going to be talking to us about the latest developments in relation to Zanubrutinib. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all today. I just wanted to take this opportunity again to discuss, I think, the latest NICE and SMC decisions and give everybody a chance to ask questions and understand as much as we know. So Zanubrutinib has recently been through Scottish Medical Council, SMC and NICE. I'll deal with Scotland first, just because that's a really easy one. The decision was no. Beijing have since changed the price that they're offering at, and it's going back for reconsideration at a committee in October. So I suspect we'll have a further decision on that towards the end of October, beginning of November. With NICE, the good news is that it got approved. It didn't get fully approved. There are some catches to it, but we genuinely believe, alongside working with Beijing, that we can help both patients and doctors navigate access to it. So the good news is, if you have had DRC as your combination of chemotherapy as a treatment, you are eligible to have Zanubrutinib as a next stage of treatment. If you have had BR upfront as your combination of chemotherapy, as it stands, you're not eligible to have Zanubrutinib as a second line of treatment. The bottom line for that is essentially Zanubrutinib is more cost effective than BR. It's not more cost effective than DRC. And whilst there's other factors at play that get taken into consideration, and I'd like to thank everybody who gave me and shared their patient experiences with me of being on Zanubrutinib, and Ron, who was our patient expert, and obviously to Beijing for all the work they did in pulling the data together, it still wasn't sufficient to reduce the amount of uncertainty that NICE had around this drug. And when they're still left with uncertainty, they ask that effectively the drug is made really cost effective. So with WM, uncertainty around the data, drug needs to be really cheap. Drug is cheap enough to beat one form of chemotherapy and not another. So how do we help the patients that have had BR up front as their chemotherapy regime? We are going to produce a guide for patients, which is questions to ask your consultant to how to get access. And alongside that, some of you may know Shirley Desar, one of our trustees, Dima, who is one of our trustees who works at the Royal Marsden, and Roger Owen, who he isn't a trustee, but Roger has recently joined our research committee. He works out of Leeds. All big WM experts. They have been making a video this week, which will be available to other consultants to help them get access to Zanubrutinib if you have a patient that has been treated up front with BR. And if Bob doesn't mind sharing, I'm going to just ask him to share a conversation he had this morning. Bob was treated with BR up front. The whole thing with getting access to Zanubrutinib, if you've had BR, is your consultant doesn't have to treat you with BR. They just have to say they would consider treating you with BR. And if they would consider treating you with BR, then you become eligible for Zanubrutinib. And Bob, perhaps if you just want to share the conversation you had this morning, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. I was with my consultant this morning. Nothing to do with my WM. It was to do with charity, but I was having a photograph taken with her. But I looked her in the eye and asked her outright. I said, Helen, if I need treatment, would you give me BR again? And she said no. I said, but all right, okay, bearing in mind what you now know about the ruling, would you consider giving me BR again? And she looked me in the eye and said, yes, I would. So there is the mechanism there. If your consultant is, persuaded to at least consider it, to get Zanubrutinib. So for me personally, despite having been treated with BNR, I now feel pretty confident, as long as Helen is my consultant, that I will qualify for Zanubrutinib, which is good news. And there's no reason why all of our consultants shouldn't be able to be perhaps persuaded to go down that route.
And I just add to that, Beijing are doing a number of events for healthcare professionals to essentially maybe promote Zanubrutinib to them, but to explain, to give them examples of why it's an efficient treatment, and to explain how to get access to it. And I'm involved in the first one of those in November. So Beijing are doing a full-on education campaign to help consultants navigate their way to getting this drug. We're going to try and arm you as patients with the same information and help you every step of the way to getting access to it. Like I say, if you've had DRC up front, then you can now have Zanu. So it's brilliant news that we do have another treatment option on the table. Our job is now, I think, over the next 5 years, to get you access to as many treatment options as we can. And we are now starting to talk to all the pharma who are in the WM space, who are developing either new treatments for WM or looking at are there existing drugs that they have that they can use in this space. The other thing that I'm taking personally and putting into the strategy for WMUK out of my experience of these committee meetings is we absolutely need to get more data on WM, because at the moment we just don't have enough, and every time we're going to come up against this, there's too much uncertainty. So as an organisation, we're putting a data strategy together, and we're going to broaden the scope of data we collect, and we're going to do that as well as helping us understand the reality of living with WM, and as well as perhaps, you know, uncovering things we didn't know. The sole aim of it will be to make sure that we can help get access and get more treatments approved for WM patients, because it really strikes me that, you know, WM is not curable, but it is treatable. But the irony is, at the moment, is you don't have a whole host of treatment options, and what we need to do is absolutely improve that. So that is a really key focus for us as an organisation moving forward. I appreciate, you know, there may be some disappointment for some around this decision that it wasn't an unequivocal yes, but I can assure you, I can't remember now if we went to 3 or 4 committees on it. We did everything we could, and ultimately we just hit the brick wall of there just isn't enough data out there to reduce the uncertainty as NICE see it around drugs. And some insight they also gave us is that very often data that's presented to NICE is from what, in their words, they would call athlete patients, which is patients who are being treated by WM experts at, say, UCL or at leading WM treatment centres. What they're really, really interested to understand is actually what's the experience like if you are treated at your local district hospital where you're maybe not under a WM expert, and if you're then given this treatment, how much difference does that make to you? So to incorporate that into our plans, as well as collecting clinical data, we're going to start a big campaign to collect real world data as well, which is effectively what that is. What's going on with you guys outside of the clinical data, add in real world data, and also add in more quality of life data. So some of you might know at the moment, we have something called the Rory Morrison Registry. An amazing thing, helps us punch above our weight, was founded about 5 years ago. Has about 23 hospitals that enter clinical data on WM patients into it. We need to get more clinical data into it, but we also are looking at getting all the HES data that's held in the NHS on WM patients into it as well. We're then going to start to collect real world data, and then I'm going to ask over the coming month, you'll be hearing a lot of me asking you to complete our quality of life questionnaire, which is on there, which is every quarter. The biggest thing you can do over the next few years is share your data as a WM patient. That is truly what is going to change things for you and get more treatments on the table. And we will drive that as much as we can, and we will make sure we're having conversations with all the right people. And hopefully as well, sometimes by the time we talk to pharma, it's sort of at the end of a path. we're trying to get involved with pharma at much earlier stages, so we can help them design the clinical trials they're doing. We can help make sure they're collecting the right data, so that by the time we get to a drug appraisal, they can answer all the questions they need to answer. So lots and lots for WMUK to have learned as an organisation from these recent drug appraisals. Plenty of actions that we've taken on board and we're going to put in place to improve outcomes for you guys and get more treatments on the table. Take it as good news that we have approval. We will help you navigate round it for those that at the moment it's not approved for, because there is a way of getting it. And I guess that really was, you know, my take on what's happened over the last few months with Zanu. So I appreciate that kind of came off the back of ibrutinib that didn't get through, but did get through in Scotland. So it's been a bit of a turbulent few months in terms of drug decisions, but I feel we're now really well placed to make a positive impact going forward in terms of how we do this. So I just wanted to open up to any questions that anybody may have, really, either specifically about Zanu, about the process, or, you know, any wider questions about WMUK.
So guys, if you go to reactions on the bottom of your screen, and you'll see a raise hand. If you press on that raise hand, like I've just done, a little hand comes up. So if you've got a question for Jane, can you just do that for me? Or put your hand up so that I can see it, although I'm looking at two screens, so I can only see one at a time. Anybody got the hand up? No, I can't see it.
Okay, Clive and Simon. So
Here we go. Simon. Let's go with Simon first then. Simon.
I hope that was the unmute button.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, question. I wonder, does this have any impact on those already on ibrutinib? Is it going to, or?
Not that I'm aware, Simon, no.
Right, okay. I was completely unaware as to whether it's sort of the next generation of ibrutinib, and those on ibrutinib would be moved on to zanubrutinib.
No, my understanding at present is anybody who is in a trial or is currently on ibrutinib, nothing changes for them. I guess depending upon what chemotherapy they had up front, if they have Zanu as an option or not further down the line, but ibrutinib remains for those that are on it.
Fine, thank you.
So Clive next.
I'm on Zanubrutinib at the moment. I was on ibrutinib for 4+ years, and I changed in February of this year. I suppose two questions is one, I noticed that, because this is a trial, I noticed that there were other types of trials like with ibrutinib that included ibrutinib plus, oh goodness me.
Rituximab.
Thank you, yeah, thank you. And I was wondering, are they going to do something similar with zanubrutinib, that they'd add the additional one as a trial?
I don't know at this moment in time, but one of the other things that we're looking to do, because I'm very conscious we don't have, is I want to build into our website a full list of all the WM trials that are either in existence at the moment or are due to be coming on board. Because we're starting to talk to all the pharma companies that are in this space, and they're obviously keen to have people that they can recruit into trials. And I know from some of my conversations with you guys is that people are sometimes saying to us, look, I'm interested in a clinical trial, but I don't know how to find one. So essentially we want to put that two together. But I will come back to you in terms of updates from Beijing, if they have any further trials planned themselves, or any new trials that come on board around zanubrutinib.
Right. So just the second one, it's just, I'm basically, I'm with Roger Owen.
Okay.
So I was on a clinical trial before, and I'm on the zanubrutinib clinical trial. I assume it will continue for as many years as it does.
Absolutely, it will continue to collect data, because what's also important is that, you know, obviously as new treatments come on board, we understand, we collect more data about their effectiveness against other drugs, and to understand, are there certain groups of patients that might benefit more from Zanubrutinib than, say, ibrutinib? Obviously, if either you've had it on a trial or it's been available, or whichever new treatments then come next. But no, nothing changes for you; it stays the same.
Okay, thank you.
Judith, who's just had a cup of tea delivered to her, you're up next. If you come off mute.
Yes, you were not meant to see that. Anyway, so I'm fairly early on in the WM journey, as they say. So I've only had treatment with rituximab on its own. So if my consultant suggests that I do need further treatment, should I be saying I want to have DRC, or should I be saying I want to go straight on to Zanubrutinib? I can't say it, Zanu. It seems to me that what if I've understood it correctly, you're saying if you've had DRC, you can then go on to Zanu, but if you have BNR, you can't. Therefore, should it influence my choice of what he might offer me if he decides I need something else?
Yeah. Okay. I can't say what you should have. That's a discussion for you to have with your consultant, but we can give you that knowledge exactly as you've repeated it there, and and taken it on board. I think part of NICE thinking was that this will change the patient treatment pathway, in that people will all move towards having DRC first, and then have BR or now Zanu available as a second line of treatment. We did make the point to them that for some groups of patients, actually BR was needed or was preferable up front. And I think that's why they tried to make the wording as vague as possible and allow us this element of navigation around it, which says, okay, if you have had BR, as long as it would be a considered second treatment, but you don't actually even have to, take any course of it, then you could get Zanu. So up to you and your consultant what you think is best, but you're absolutely right in that if you had DRC, you could then be fully eligible for Zanu. If you had BR, it's a little trickier, but we'd help you get there.
Okay, thank you. And of course, things are developing all the time. It could all change.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Judith. And the important thing, Judith, is now you've got the questions to ask your consultant when you go back and see him or her. So you're armed with that information. And David Smith, you're next.
Hi, David.
Thanks, Bob. Hi, Jane. I think you've actually answered my question, because my first regimen was RCVP in 15, and my second regimen in 17 was DRC. So as a failed DRC because I was intolerant to rituximab.
Okay.
So I had to come off it. Would that, I mean, as you know, I'm on ibrutinib and I have been on it since 19. And it just draws into one of your participants, and I'm sorry I didn't catch his name, who had been on ibrutinib and moved to Zanu. I see no reason to move at the moment, but I would be interested to know what reasons there would be to move on to Zanu if ibrutinib is working fine.
Clive, I think you're ready to answer that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I had the same question when it happened. When I'd been on ibrutinib for 4 years, I was starting the 5th, and there was a decision made to change me to Zanubrutinib. This is the clinical trials. And the question was why? Because ibrutinib was still, I was still on a nice, slow, low curve going down, less and less proteins. Why change now? And I don't know the answer to that. It'll be all the people who made decisions about running trials. But the choice was, I think this end, go for the Zanubrutinib as part of the trials. But again, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, David and Clive. And Jane, you're next up. Jane Kidd.
Hi, Jane. And just firstly, just to say thanks ever so much for doing this call, because it's really helpful to hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, about what's happening. Really appreciate that. I suppose mine is a slightly nuanced question, which is when you said they have to consider BR, do they have to give a reason for why they then didn't use BR? Or is it okay just to say, I considered it and now I want to go for Zanubrutinib?
One of our clinicians is probably going to give you the best answer on that, Jane, but my understanding from them at the moment is it's sufficient to say that they would consider it. So as I understand it, there's something like, is it the blue tick form or something that a consultant has to fill in, to get, and it's sufficient to say they would have considered.
Okay.
But I will double check that with you, with Shirley et al, who've done the video this week. But that is my take on it. Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
From your accent there, Jane Kidd, are you in Scotland or are you in England?
No, I'm in England.
You're in England. Okay, that's fine. Yep.
I'm doing missionary work down here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So next up is the lovely Sandra. You only spoke yesterday, Sandra.
Hi, Sandra.
Yeah. Hi, Jane. Thank you for doing this. I'm not sure if mine is a question or a comment, really, but I did briefly raise it with Bob yesterday because I'm on the trial with Pirtobrutinib.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised to learn that even though the trial was covered America and Canada and Europe, there was still something like only 800 of us. So it just seems to me that that's, as you've said, the difficulty is that there is such a small amount of data that the numbers are so small. So I guess we've learned a lot from the ibrutinib and the zanubrutinib NICE appraisal. So you sort of think moving forward with trials that it needs to be something that they consider, that if they are going to try and put it to NICE and get approval, how do they get the data that's going to be sufficient? I don't know the answer, or even if there is one, but I'm sort of hoping that the powers that be are considering that when they do the trials, how are we going to get the data? Because I do the PROMS questionnaire, and I always feel that I'm not quite giving them what they need to know that I'm so much better off on this drug. I don't feel it covers it.
Okay, so I'll try. I don't think I'm going to answer that, but let me share my thoughts with you. So I've been here about, oh gosh, I don't know, about 15 months now. And I'm always conscious, we're a really small organisation. I'm full-time, I have 3 part-timers, obviously have a wonderful board of trustees and other people that come in and advise and help and etc. We have to really focus on where we can make the biggest positive difference for patients. That absolutely has to be the focus of the limited resource that we have. And my sense is, from the time I've spent here in WM, there are so many dots to join up between lots and lots of fragmented activity that's happening, that if we can start to join some of those dots, do some collaborative work, share that learning, that in itself will help us make progress. And that's both within the UK and globally. So I'm working really hard to form lots of those relationships and to make sure that WMUK is sort of round the table in lots of those discussions, so that we help to have some of this joined up thinking, if you like. Secondly is, we're here to give you support and information. And if we can do that to the best of our ability, support when you need it in either an emotional or practical way, or information, then you hopefully are the best informed patients to make the best informed decisions about your treatment choices. That's what we can do for you. So as part of that information, I feel like we have a big gap around clinical trials, around what's on, around what drugs are in development, around what's happening. So I really, really am looking to pull all that together, and on the new website to have a whole section on that. So you can go on and say, right, I'm here, I've either had I've just been on active monitoring, or maybe I'm on second relapse. What are options? What are clinical trials? What's happening? From an event I attended earlier in the year, which had all the sort of WM experts, if you like, at it, I was slightly alarmed at how many trials there were that all didn't seem to be very different from one another. And I felt like this feels a bit chaotic. But a medical colleague pointed out to me that actually to have the chaos is no bad thing. The thing you're trying to understand is, out of those bits of chaos, which one is making a positive difference? And then you take that learning and you share it. So that's the other bit, is we need to really understand, in all this activity that's happening around WM, which ones are making the positive difference, and really hone in on that. And then the last bit, I think, you know, if we will help you and facilitate it, but as a patient community, the biggest thing you can do for yourselves is share your data, because as a disease, WM is still not nearly anywhere. It's not that it's not understood enough, but we don't have the data to back any of this up. And whenever anything is going to come up for validation, for approval, for licensing, for recommendation, you know, data is always going to sort of top trump the patient experience, I'm afraid. And as much as I can speak on your behalf and bring patient experts in, it's always going to come down to data. So we have a plan to do that. We're going to start to put that in place. If we crack that bit, if we join up the dots, if we make sure you guys know everything, yeah, and do what we're aiming to do, I think in 5 years' time, WM can really, really look like a different patient and treatment landscape. And that's my ambition for you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Margaret, you're next. Margaret Al-Rakabi.
Hi, Margaret.
You're on mute, Margaret. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm here on behalf of myself and my daughter. We both have Waldenstrom's. Can I just ask my daughter's question first, because she can't be here today? She's one of the younger patients with it, and she was thinking, should Zanubrutinib be saved for later on when chemo might not be tolerated?
So again, I can't give you the answer on that. I can share with you discussion, Margaret, that I've been in the room when it's happened between consultants. Some consultants feel with younger patients, because they are therefore younger and fitter, they're better able to tolerate chemotherapy and should have that first and save something like Zanu for later. And there's also the question of, you know, Zanu is still a little bit of an unknown. So it's like, how long can you take it for without considerable side effects? And some consultants feel the opposite, that you should do it the other way. And I think this is one of the challenges as a patient with WM. There is not a definitive treatment pathway. And so often you are having to be part of that process that makes choices around your treatment. And that's why we need to give you as much support and information as we can in doing that. So I don't know, that's your choice to make. And I know that's hard, because I've seen both sides of that argument expressed by consultants.
Thank you. Can I get on to my few questions? Yeah. I'm getting on a bit. So, I've got other comorbidities. And when I was talking to Dr. Desai's team, they said, because I'm on watch and wait, if and when I needed treatment, they would just go straight to Zanubrutinib. I think the thought at the time, yes, it's okay, it's been, you know, validated and it's okay. What is the option now? Because they say that it's possible, because I've got a heart problem, lung problem, that I wouldn't be able to tolerate a full-blown chemo. So it's a little bit worrying, to say the least.
Okay, is that from the point of view of Zanu hasn't been recommended for those who can't tolerate chemotherapy?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. But certainly if you're under Shirley is going to be absolutely best placed to understand what those options are. Again, that was part of our conversation at a number of the NICE committee meetings. And one of the discussions that's ongoing is to whether we look at doing a trial to understand the effectiveness of Zanubrutinib, you know, in those conditions. But at the moment, it came up for discussion, and NICE would not recommend it. So, but please, you know, talk to Shirley about it. Shirley certainly knows her way around the system, and she may well have an answer for you.
Yeah, I'm on shared care actually with our local hospital because I'm in the Midlands.
Yeah.
But and I know that it's a very good centre in the Midlands, but whilst it's not the experts, I would never ever accept a treatment without first of all okaying it with Shirley in London. So,
and I think that's very common for many WM patients, is they will be treated and seen at their local hospital and then almost be under the guidance of, you know, and again, it's an ambition I have for all WM patients, is, you know, if you are diagnosed with WM, you should have access to a WM expert. Why would you not be able to see an expert in your disease? And that doesn't mean that, you know, it doesn't carry along the model that you're doing, which is you're treated locally. So you're not having to travel all the time for treatment, but it's under the guise of somebody who's an expert in that disease. So I'm glad you've been able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That's answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret, just to add to that is, this is for second line treatment, but I know from some patients who have gone in for chemo and within even half an hour of starting their treatment and having a bad reaction, they conclude that treatment, that counted as your first line treatment. So even the fact that they've tried rituximab or tried BR and it didn't last very long into the first session, that counts as the first line of treatment. It wasn't successful, then you move on to second line. So I think there's merit there that Shirley, especially Shirley, would be able to negotiate that.
I would, yeah, Bob, I would just echo that. I have heard Shirley say that she has officially given a patient chemotherapy when effectively that chemotherapy's maybe lasted for 5 minutes. Yeah,
that's it. And
thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Beautiful, thank you.
You're Noelle's mum, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah, she couldn't be here today. She's elsewhere.
She's on holiday, I know. John, you're next. John Green.
Hi, John.
Hi, Jane. Thank you very much for doing this.
No, you're very welcome.
Okay. I've actually been trying to read the NICE report. You could argue I've been fortunate in the much that I actually had DRC as my first line of treatment. Have NICE articulated in easy words their reason for, if you've had BR as first line treatment, then in their words, you know, the use of Zanu would not be available. I don't know whether it's compounded by the fact there's been no direct comparison between DRC and BR, and that's sort of something they've taken into consideration, and whether in general the response is deemed generally better with BR than it is with DRC. I just wondered if in the meetings you've attended, they've actually articulated in sort of simple terms their reason for effectively restricting the access to Zanu for people who have had BR as the first line of treatment. Do they consider the first line of treatment with BR provides better response than a first line treatment of DRC?
There was some talk in the committee meetings about the lack of direct comparators in the evidence that they were given. But the bottom line, John, was I think the term was it was not economically effective against DRC. So therefore, if you've had BR first, DRC is a much cheaper option to give you as a second line treatment, and they will revert back to, you know, for every, they have one pot of money, And for every decision they make to approve a drug, they are taking it away from another potential drug, or, that they can fund. So hence this whole thing about what they are looking for all the time is absolute certainty in the data that they're presented, because the more certain they are and that they can justify that this drug is effective and it does give you longer disease-free progression times, and it does add to quality of life, and it does give you, added life than you would normally have in terms of lifespan, then they are more confident and likely to approve or recommend that drug for use. Where they still feel there's gaps and uncertainty, and also, the pharma company provide the data and they present their take on it. NICE also have, I think it's called ERG, like the external expert group, the independent experts that then come in to give their take on it. And quite often sometimes that's pulled apart and they give a different perspective. And so then when you have uncertainty and you have gaps and you have things that you absolutely can't shut down, they go, well, we don't know, we're a bit stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's uncertainty. So if you want us to recommend this, yes, we can, but it's going to have to be really cost effective. And that's a correlation between uncertainty and price that they ask for. And at the end of the day, BeiGene did shift and did make movement on price for them. So that's what got us the approval. But I think the view was they were never going to economically be able to compete with DRC. And so unless the data had been that robust and that convincing, it just wasn't going to happen. And a lot of the third and fourth, I think, committee meetings really was the deliberation around how can we word the recommended use of this to allow perhaps, a little bit of navigation through the system so others can benefit without shutting that door completely.
So NICE recognise the wiggle room, if you like.
Yes, and they said it was chaired by Jane Adams, the same person all the way through. And she said there is absolutely no doubt there is an unmet clinical need for this. There is absolutely no doubt there is a patient need for this. Ron, who was our patient expert, had extensive treatment experience of his years he'd lived with WM, and he was like, the moment I started on Zanubrutinib, literally within 24 hours, my life improved. And she's like, there is no doubt, from everything that we've heard, that if we did not have to justify the certainty around the data and ensure it was cost effective, we would approve this drug fully. But these are the parameters within which we have to work. And so I think that's the real opportunity for us as an organisation, is to drive this data exercise and say, let's collect a much broader scope of data from WM patients across all the areas I've spoken about, so that the next time we go into this process, we are much better armed to remove that uncertainty for NICE. And let's work much earlier with pharma companies around their trial design and around the data that they're collecting.
Right.
So we know what the answer is. We now just need to do it, and we know how to do it. We just are going to need the patient population's help to do it.
Just one thing about the patient data. I mean, there's quite a bit of chat, WM chat, on the Blood Cancer UK site. I would sort of presume that WMUK and Blood Cancer UK can join together and assimilate all the data, so that WMUK and Blood Cancer UK aren't doing separate things.
Yeah, so in terms of our earlier point on collaboration, so we're part of the Blood Cancer Alliance, which has all the blood cancer charities in it, Blood Cancer UK being one of those. We collaborate as much as possible. A really good example of that is Eversheld, the antiviral drug that there was a lot of concern about, obviously not being able to get access to. Blood Cancer UK have sort of used their might and driven a campaign on that, which we've contributed to, and you should see that in the media. I think it's week beginning 17th of October. It was due to go out beginning of September, but the Queen's death sort of pushed everything back. But we have joined forces there to try and get this made available to all blood cancer patients. So that's like one example of it. But yeah, absolutely, John, where we can, you know, that collaboration, that joining up of dots, as I've said, that sharing of data, if we maximize that in itself is a step forward as well, and that's what we need to be doing.
Just finally on that issue of Evershell, I see the EU have authorised it across the EU countries. We, being sort of outside the EU, are the only ones that haven't authorised. So
yeah, and that's obviously, you know, part of the issue. My understanding is I think it was going to a NICE appraisal in March of next year is the plan at the moment. But obviously this whole campaign is to say that's not acceptable. It's been approved everywhere else. These patients really need it. You know, blood cancer patients so often get forgotten. So you will see it in like mainstream media, press ads. You'll see it on social media. There's lobbying going to Parliament. There's like, you know, those A-frame vans that drive around with the thing. They're parking that outside the Houses of Parliament. There's like a whole coordinated campaign. And then patients, I think there's on all the stuff you'll see, there's a QR code. You can scan it and you go and sign a petition. And so they're trying to make enough noise to get this for patients in the UK, and we've become part of that campaign as well. So yeah, you know, that's one example of that. But wherever we can, you know, you're always stronger together, aren't you? And that's what we're trying to do.
Right, thank you very much, Jane.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So that's the end of the hands up for questions. Some great questions there. So just really, I want to say something. There's 38 of us here now. So that's 36 patients, including myself. On behalf of all those patients, Jane, I want to say thank you for coming into WMUK. You've really picked it up by the scruff of the neck, and you're making us punch well above our weight, and we'll continue to do so. So thanks for that. And thanks for turning up today to answer these questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Can I also just say, hopefully, I think, Louisa, if you're on here, our registration for our Patient Doctor Summit started yesterday. So that's on Saturday, 19th of November. We asked you all if you wanted a face-to-face event or an online event. You were 50-50 split, so we've done a hybrid. So it's a venue in Birmingham. It's really easy for the train station. It's really easy to park. It's really easy if you want to stay overnight. Likewise, you can join us online. It's going to be a brilliant lineup. It's absolutely everything you need to know as a WM patient. It will be great to come and see some of you in person. I think the lecture theatre holds about 100 people. And if you come on the day, you can also book some time with one of our WM experts. So please, if you can, join us for that day. I know lots of you did last year, and we had some great feedback. We've taken that on board, and hopefully this will, you know, give you everything you need and more.
I just want to jump in. It hasn't gone. The link hasn't gone yet. As soon as it has, we'll be sharing it via email on social media. Okay. There's just been a little bit of a hiccup, but yes, it'll be out by the end of the week. Everyone will be able to register, but if you want any info in the meantime, just drop us an email and we can add your name to the list to contact. So
thank you. Thanks, Louisa. So yeah, end of the week. And as always, you know, our job here is to make a positive difference for you. So please always feel free to feed back to any of us. You know, if there's something that you don't feel we're addressing, if there's something you don't think we're aware of, if there's something you'd like to see action on, you know, you see a really good idea somewhere else, any experience or anything, I'm really passionate that what we do is informed by you, because we need to meet your needs. So we're always here. You know, if somebody doesn't answer the phone, send us an email. We'll always get back to you, but please, Our job is to make things and improved outcomes in the immediate and longer term for you as a patient community and your friends, families, carers, etc. Oh, and just a really quick note, whilst I've got you all, just to say we had our first WMUK Nurse Study Day a couple of weeks ago in London, which was a great success. We're going to do more of them regionally in 2023. I forgot what year it was then. Really excited about that because it's the first time we've had a specific WM Nurse Study Day. And again, a really important part of improving patient outcomes is improving the knowledge, expertise and understanding of WM by healthcare professionals. Yeah, some of those nurses work alongside the likes of Shirley and see a lot of WM patients. A lot of clinical nurses don't see very many WM patients in their working life. So we are trying to inform and educate as much as we can, because then hopefully the more they know, the more positive benefit that has on your experience. So that started, we'll have more of those. So yeah, thank you. I'll shut up now. I can advert.
So guys, that concludes today's meeting. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Louisa, for setting it up. And so David says thanks very much. Yeah, for this Q&A. I'm going to hang around if anybody wants to chat to me as you log off, but particular welcome to Stephen joining us from Greece and Chris joining us from Germany. You're very welcome. And for the rest of you, have a good rest of the day.